Hey up everyone, I've got an interesting article here and it's about a minister who's been speaking about making job seekers who repeatedly turn down jobs be considered for conscription. Now there is obviously the surface level understanding of this, but I do think, and I will get into it later, I do think there is deeper meaning to be found if we look into this story. I haven't read the article yet, so I've only got a very basic understanding of what it's about, and I may be surprised by some of the things I may be mentioned in this myself. So I'll crack on with it and then I'll give some opinions as we get through it. So Tory MP calls for job seekers who repeatedly turn down work to be conscripted. The senior Conservative MP said some young people are not prepared to contribute to our country. I don't think it's some young people. I think it's a lot of young people. And I don't think it's necessarily just those who are unemployed either. I think there's lots of young people who are very well educated who also don't want to contribute to the country in any meaningful way. They'd rather go out protesting and holding up placards and reminding us of how racist and bigoted and homophobic we all are. So it's not necessarily just a job seekers problem, but I think a societal wide issue that we are facing with this. Before I get deeply into this, I do think, and before I fully explain myself, I am open to it being wider for consideration. But this is just an idea to throw out. I do think that voting should be linked to service. Maybe not while you're in service, but certainly for veterans only. And maybe also for things like fire department, ambulance. You know, there could be some other branches thrown into that too. But I think voting should be a right that you earn and shouldn't necessarily be something that it shouldn't be a privilege that's just given. You know, if you're not willing to put your life on the line for the country, why should you get a say in the running of it? Now I could be wrong in that. Maybe it's a little bit too authoritarian, that point of view, but I definitely think it's an avenue that needs at least exploring. But back on with this. Young job seekers who repeatedly turn down work shall be conscripted for 2 years, a Tory MP has said. Surface level of that, not necessarily a bad idea for people who are habitually jobless. Whether they should be put into mission critical roles, like, say, I don't know, being an infantryman. I don't know if that responsibility should be given to them. Could be dangerous. But definitely put into ancillary job roles. Things that are called like the pioneers in the Royal Logistics Corps. And they basically do things like labouring and digging ditches and stuff. You know, maybe getting them doing stuff like that. You know, things where you don't necessarily need the most motivated people. You just need a lot of them, you know, just to do jobs where you need to throw a lot of bodies at it to get it done. So say like when there's flooding, you know, it's just getting people going out filling sandbags, you know, and trying to block the flooding and, you know, doing that sort of, and not to deploy them either. You know, conscripts shouldn't be deployed to war zones. They should only be, for at worst, defending the country. Richard Drax, a member of the Commons Defence Select Committee, said there is a growing issue with workshy youngsters. There absolutely is. The former armour captain told the House magazine, in some cases, particularly among some of the young, they've got to a point where, for whatever reason, they're not prepared to contribute to our country and to serve the country. If they can't be encouraged to do that, then maybe we've got to a point where they should be told to do so. And if they've refused 3 offers of a job, or whatever the number would be, and they say, I'm sorry, I'm not doing any of that, you then say, in which case you must go and do 2 years in the armed forces. Again, I don't think it's necessarily an unreasonable point of view on the surface of it. But you want, in a military, you want volunteers preferably, because volunteers will fight much harder. However, as I say, if you do put them in more ancillary level job roles, basic dog's body work, or, you know, chefing, you know, things where you're not being expected to risk your life, you know, and they're just being told what to do, where to be, you know, basic stuff. Learning basic life skills as well. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Although we do have to be very careful, and I will go off on a little bit of a tangent here. You do get some people sometimes who say that they think that sex work should be classed as real work. And this leans into that a little bit, is be careful what you wish for, because you could end up with people being told to the knocking shop with you because you've just refused some jobs and there's a vacancy there, so guess what you're doing now for a living. And also with that as well, again, I'm going off topic here, but people who support that, I mean, would you be willing for your boss to change your work contract and for you to have to perform manual duties once a week on your boss, if you get what I mean? I wouldn't be very happy with that, and I don't think there's many other people who'd be very happy with that. So, you know, I'll leave that there, but I just thought I'd throw that in quickly because some people do have that wild idea that intimate activities between people can be considered an emotionless transaction. But there you go. But with this, now, for people who've watched some of my more recent videos or quite a few of my older videos, you'll know that I do believe that we are going into a war footing. And I do believe that the ruling elite, and not just MPs, but various other indicators, even like the newspapers constantly printing these pictures now, I do believe that we're going into a war footing, and I do believe that this is part of the normalisation of that to get it into people's minds. So even if this plan actually goes nowhere, it's about getting into people's mind the idea of things like conscription and, you know, signing up for the military. And we're going to start, I think, seeing a ramp up of industry and possibly factories being opened up or repurposed for military production. And this article here is just further confirmation of that, of the ruling elite signalling to wider society that going forward we are heading into a war footing, so to speak. And we probably are going to see conscription. I'm almost convinced that conscription will actually be a thing in the near to short distance future. And we also see other signals of this as well from the elites. Like we had the submarine failing to successfully launch a nuclear missile when they tested it, one of the Trident missiles. Again, I don't think that was an accident, that was publicised so widely and so openly. I mean, I would think normally that would come under the official secrets or wanting to keep it a military secret, but the fact they've openly spoken about it. And same with the recent issues with one of the aircraft carriers where it went to Scotland for repairs and it caught fire. I don't know the full details of it. I don't know how big the fire was. I just know I saw a brief headline. I never read into it. I was just flicking through and saw that the aircraft carrier had caught fire. Again, I think that's been publicised to try and get the public on board with higher investment into the military. Again, because I believe that we are going into a war footing. Adding to that, other things that I've said in other videos as well, like with the money going to the Muslim War Memorial, which people can think what they want, but at the end of the day, we have a Hindu one, we have a Gurkha one, we have a Commonwealth Soldiers Memorial as well. It goes in keeping with that. So, you know, in that regard, we have all these other unique memorials for various reasons. We even have an Animals of War one and a Women of War specific one. So, you know, with all these boxes that the current regime like to tick, it's just another box to tick. So in that regard, it's not unusual. However, I do believe that the publicity of it being so highly made, especially during the budget, and it was the first item of the budget, I do think, again, that signals a future war footing. For those of you who haven't seen previous videos, I do believe the deeper meaning of that is that they are trying to normalise the Islamic communities into wider society. And by normalisation, I don't mean to say that people who are Muslims are weirdos. I mean as in being a part of the mythos, so to speak, of British culture and British tradition and British history, as in not necessarily the wider British Empire, but the actual islands of Britain itself, and trying to create that connection with the land of Great Britain, so that people will be, from those communities, more comfortable with, say, being conscripted or with volunteering for military service. And again, this article today that I've read about this jobless people being conscripted, once again further highlights that. I won't go any deeper into the article. In fact, I'll just have a quick flick through. I'll see if there's anything more interesting. He said, he's just basically going on about people being work shy. General Patrick Sanders said in a speech, Ukraine brutally illustrates that regular armies start wars, citizens' armies win them. Well, Ukraine aren't winning the war. Ukraine are badly losing it. And all the major successes that we see, I believe, are actually NATO soldiers operating within Ukraine. Now, that again, people may kick off about that, but that's nothing unusual. I mean, during the Vietnam War, the overwhelming majority of the surface-to-air missile operators on the North Vietnamese side were actually Russian soldiers. They go over as what they would call military advisors, but they end up doing most of the work themselves because the people that they're trying to advise don't have a clue what they're doing. Whereas the people advising are there, obviously, to advise. They know how to do the job, so they end up doing it themselves. I believe that Russian ship that was recently sunk by a Sea Dart was actually sunk by British soldiers. I can't 100% confirm that. That's just what I've heard on the grapevine. So I don't know how much truth there is in that. I believe that came from the German military leaks. So if you're interested in that, go look into that a bit more yourself. I mean, there's not really much more in this story. It's just, I do think, again, I'm going to repeat myself slightly, but just a basic summary. I think we're seeing a lot of signalling from the ruling elites that we are going onto a war footing. I think they're heavily indicating that conscription is going to be coming in. We are hearing it from various generals that citizen armies are a thing, and this is trying to get it into the sort of subconscious of people's minds so they aren't shocked when it comes to pass. I'll leave it at that. If you found that insightful, even if you don't necessarily agree with me, but if it's giving you something to think about, please do like, subscribe, and definitely put a comment below. I love hearing other people's opinions. I'm not a closed book. I love learning off other people, and I'm definitely open to new ideas. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Goodbye and take care.